These are the last images of Anahe Bunis, a young Argentine woman living a double life, a teacher by day and an escort by night. Her nighttime activities were a closely guarded secret, one that no one ever suspected. However, what the young teacher could never have imagined was that her double life would ultimately lead to her demise. Anahe Esther Boños was born in 1986 in Córdoba, the second most populous city in Argentina and the capital of the province with the same name. Her father's name was Carlos, but her mother's identity has not been disclosed. According to sources, Anahe's parents were fundamental pillars in her life, both working hard to provide a structured and loving home for their children. From a very young age, Anahe loved going to school and always said that one day she would become a teacher. Her family described her as a curious and dedicated child. Although many details of her personal life remain unknown, it is known that Ana was an exclusive private school for girls from cradle to graduation. Her first relationship was with Marcos Rappi, whom she married at the age of 18. The couple had 2 daughters together, the eldest of whom was born with a disability. Anahe's first marriage lasted a few years but ended because Marcos became violent toward her. According to statements from Anahe's family, Marcos physically and emotionally abused her, even during her pregnancies. Because of this, Anahe's parents convinced her that Marcos was not a good man and that the best thing for her to do was to separate and distance herself from him, which she did. Despite being somewhat traumatized by her first marriage, Anahe found the strength to move forward and protect her children. Sometime later, Anahe met another man whose identity has not been revealed. She began dating him and later married him. Anahe was seeking a stable marriage and a safe home for herself and her daughters. From this union, her third child was born. Everything seemed to be going well, but things didn't turn out as she had hoped, as her new husband also turned out to be a violent man. Anahe remained in this second marriage for years, until at some point she couldn't endure it any longer and decided to separate and distance herself. However, this was not easy for her for several reasons. One of them was that her ex-partner from the second marriage began stalking her to the point where Anahe had to file for a restraining order against him and carry a panic button in case he approached her. After leaving this second marriage, Anahe spent some time single until she met Nestor Sinistrari, a teacher in the municipal school system. Anahe and Nestor started dating and soon entered a relationship. Although there are no police reports, people close to Anahe said that Nestor was extremely controlling and possessive of her. He forced Anahe to make video calls whenever she went out alone to ensure she was where she said she would be. Anahe even had to make video calls when she visited her sister's house. Because of Nestor's behavior and her past negative experiences with relationships, Anahe decided to end the relationship. She and Nestor had been together for only a few months. At that time, Anahe was facing financial difficulties. Her first husband was not paying child support for their 2 children, and she had to manage on her own with what little she had. Although her parents supported her with whatever she needed, she felt bad about depending on them and didn't want to be a burden. Anahe wanted to be independent and provide a dignified future for her children. She then began studying to become a teacher, something she had dreamed of since she was a child and that her parents fully supported her in pursuing. After finishing her studies, Anahe began working at 2 schools near the neighborhood where she lived in Córdoba. Her students and colleagues considered her an exemplary teacher. However, despite her hard work and holding 2 jobs, her income was not enough to support her children, especially her eldest, whose medical condition required significant expenses. Because of this, Anahe started considering something drastic, entering the world of prostitution to earn extra income. Anahe began leading a double life, teacher by day and prostitute by night. Neither her family, friends, nor colleagues knew about this. Unfortunately, Anahe would learn in the worst possible way how there are malicious people ready to destroy someone's life for any reason. By the end of 2022, Anahe was living at her parents' house with her children. As mentioned earlier, her parents supported her in whatever she needed and assured her she could stay with them for as long as necessary. On December 4th, a Sunday, Anahi shared a photo on her social media of herself with her family in a field. In the picture, there was also a man whose identity has not been revealed, but it is known that he and Anahi were seeing each other. That night, after the outing, everyone returned home and went to bed. Around 2 a.m., Anahi's youngest daughter, who was 7 years old at the time, woke up and noticed that her mother was not in the room with her. Anahi usually shared a room with her youngest daughter at her parents' house, while the older children slept in another room. Noticing her mother's absence, the sleepy girl assumed her mother had gone to take a bath and went back to sleep. However, when everyone in the house woke up in the morning, they became very worried. Anahi was not at home, but what was strange was that all the belongings she usually took with her when she went out, such as her cell phone and wallet which contained her ID, were still in the house. This wasn't the only detail that caught her family's attention. In the middle of the night, Anahi had sent a final message to the school where she worked, informing them that she would be absent because she supposedly needed to take one of her daughters to the doctor. Her parents found this odd, as there was no medical appointment scheduled for their granddaughter that day. Their anxiety grew when they received a call from the school where Anahi worked in the afternoon, reporting that she had not shown up and had not informed them of the reason for her absence. Anahi was a responsible woman and would never miss work without notifying anyone. Following this call, Anahi's parents went to the police to report her disappearance. The fact that she had left without her cell phone made the police's job more difficult, as there was no way to track her or even determine where she had been. Additionally, since her family was unaware of her nighttime activities, the police didn't initially consider the possibility that the crime might be connected to prostitution. As a result, authorities initially pursued other lines of investigation. Given Anahi's history of abusive relationships, early suspicions fell on her ex-partners. The men were summoned to give statements at the police station while the police conducted their investigation. Anahi's family, students, and colleagues organized their own search and launched a social media campaign to find her. The case quickly drew media attention, which began publishing images of the missing teacher. Thanks to the widespread coverage, on December 13th, the police received their first crucial lead in piecing together the case. What had happened? Investigators gathered testimonies from several people who claimed to have seen Anahi that night. Among them was a taxi driver who reported having driven the teacher from her home to downtown Cordoba. The man stated that Anahi was one of his regular customers and that he frequently took her to that area in the early hours of the morning. He also mentioned dropping her off near a shopping center where she walked to a corner where she usually waited for clients. Following this testimony, and with the help of neighbors who provided footage from their home and nearby business surveillance cameras, investigators were able to reconstruct the path Anahi took after leaving the taxi. In the footage, the woman is seen being approached first by two drivers who appear to inquire about her services before driving away. Anahi remained on the corner for some time until at 1:23 a.m., a man on foot approached her. After talking for about 30 seconds, they both walked toward a building that housed a hotel near the corner where Anahi had been standing. The police assumed they might have known each other given how quickly they left together. However, a disturbing detail caught the authorities' attention. The surveillance footage showed no record of Anahi leaving the building. But that wasn't all. The police discovered that cameras also captured the same man leaving the building the next day 11 times, each time carrying trash bags and several backpacks. By accessing additional cameras in the area, the police observed the man disposing of the trash bags and backpacks in different garbage containers. After speaking with several sex workers who operated in the area, investigators discovered that the man seen in the footage was a regular client who worked at a nearby bakery. Following this lead, the police obtained a search warrant for the hotel where the encounter had taken place. It was discovered that the suspect rented a room on a monthly basis as part of an agreement with the hotel. During the search, the police did not find Anahi or any clues about her whereabouts, but they did find her clothing and bloodstains that appeared to have been unsuccessfully cleaned. They also discovered sharp objects, including knives and a saw, as well as books and artifacts linked to black magic, spiritism, and the dissection of human bodies. A forensic examination of the suspect's cell phone and computer revealed an obsession with disturbing content. He possessed numerous photos and hours of uncensored videos depicting gruesome crimes. The blood samples and tools found in the suspect's room were sent for analysis to confirm whether the DNA matched Anahi's. Shortly after his arrest, the suspect's identity was made public. He was identified as Santiago Alberto Campos Matos, a 37-year-old man. According to reports, Santiago was born in 1985 and had a troubled childhood. He was abandoned by his father and subjected to abuse at the hands of his stepfather. Experts who evaluated him noted that this contributed to the development of a criminal personality. At the age of 19, Santiago was admitted to a rehabilitation center for drug addiction after leaving the program. He relocated to Córdoba. In Córdoba, Santiago met a woman named Natalia Rodriguez, with whom he lived for 15 years and had 2 daughters. Santiago held various jobs throughout his life, and at the time of the incident, he worked as a kitchen assistant at a bakery. His neighbors described him as a quiet man who spent most of his time inside his hotel room, where strange noises were sometimes heard at night. Some hotel guests reported that days after Anahi's disappearance, Santiago disposed of a mattress, claiming it was old and uncomfortable to sleep on. The police suspected he got rid of the mattress because it could have been incriminating evidence. Following this lead, the authorities began searching nearby dumpsters for the mattress. Investigators also learned that after December 5th, Santiago missed work for at least 5 days. He told some people that he had been mugged and even showed visible injuries on his body. Authorities uncovered that in November 2021, Santiago had been arrested for attempting to assault 4 girls aged between 10 and 11 years. The girls were friends of his daughters, and according to reports, Santiago came home drunk and tried to take advantage of them. The girls' mothers reported him, and he was arrested. However, for unknown reasons, Santiago was released after just 3 months in prison, and the charges were dropped. Despite being confronted with all the evidence linking him to Anahi's disappearance, Santiago denied knowing her and refused to give any statements. However, investigators were convinced of his involvement and suspected they were dealing with a potential serial killer. While they awaited the forensic analysis results of the evidence found in his apartment, authorities believed there was little chance Anahi was still alive, and Santiago was charged with homicide. Despite the family's hopes of finding Anahi alive, the investigation results brought a tragic confirmation. In early 2023, the family organized a rally to demand progress in the investigation and keep the case in the public eye. During the protest, Anahi's father Carlos gave a shocking interview accusing Nestor, her most recent ex-partner. Carlos claimed he suspected Nestor might be involved in Anahi's disappear and even suggested he had hired Santiago to make her disappear. Following these statements, Nestor, accompanied by his lawyer, voluntarily presented himself to the police to give his testimony. Surprisingly, Anahi's first husband also came forward, alleging that her own family could be behind the case. He stated that Carlos, Anahi's father, was a violent man who had previously threatened his life. Early in their relationship, he described Carlos as jealous and manipulative, speculating that he might have harmed his own daughter upon discovering her involvement in prostitution on social media. While some dismissed the idea of the family being involved in such a sinister conspiracy, others considered it a plausible theory. However, all these speculations came to an end when the police received the results of the blood samples found in Santiago's room. Laboratory tests confirmed that the DNA matched Anahi's genetic profile. This not only put an end to all theories, but also shattered the family's hope of finding Anahi alive. Her relatives urged the prosecution to charge Santiago with all the crimes he committed, aiming for the harshest possible sentence. They also requested greater efforts from the authorities to locate Anahi's body so they could bid her a proper farewell. However, as mentioned earlier, Santiago was seen discarding black bags and backpacks into dumpsters, which were later collected by garbage trucks and transported to landfills. Efforts to recover Anahi's remains turned into an unprecedented search in Cordova's criminal history. Before starting the process, authorities conducted extensive investigations, including reviewing street footage and geolocating garbage trucks operating in the area during the time Santiago disposed of the remains. Using this information, specialists responsible for waste compaction determined that out of the 12 trucks covering the route, 3 transported waste to the main landfill, while the other 9 went to a recycling facility. Since the search began in March 2023, the complex operation, initially projected to last 5 months, stretched to nearly a year. Tons upon tons of waste were meticulously examined in search of bones or teeth that could be linked to Anahi's DNA. Unfortunately, nothing was found. With the certainty that Anahi's remains would never be recovered, her family, in February 2024, established a memorial at the S. Viente Cemetery to have a symbolic place to honor her memory. They erected a kind of tombstone and planted 5 trees in remembrance of Anahi. Although her body was never found, and despite Santiago's lawyers arguing for his legal insanity due to alleged mental disorders, in August 2024, Santiago, then 39 years old, was found guilty of aggravated homicide and sentenced to life imprisonment. He offered an alternate version of events, claiming that after entering his room, they began drinking and using drugs, and Anahi allegedly overdosed and died. Panicked, Santiago said he dismembered her body and disposed of it in the trash. Unsurprisingly, this explanation failed to convince the jury, who, after reviewing the evidence presented by the prosecution, concluded Santiago was nothing more than a lying criminal. Today, Santiago Alberto Campos Matos is serving his sentence in a maximum security prison in the Córdoba region.